The holidays start here at Kroger with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Kroger has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Next Saturday, Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans. They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Next Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. 3 consecutive wins in 9 days saw the Reds climb to the top of the Premier League table last weekend, and though a youthful-looking side lost midweek in a dead rubber to Union Saint-Gilloise in the Europa League, Klopp's attention is clearly on the run of games ahead and the arrival of a beleaguered-looking Manchester United this Sunday at Anfield. Joining me as ever on the pod to delve into the turbulent world of Manchester United, where a sense of resignation appears to have engulfed the club and fans of late, following their limp exit from the Champions League last week, I'm delighted to welcome back my friend Carl Anka, Manchester United correspondent for The Athletic and a regular across Totally Football and Righty's House podcasts. Welcome back, Carl. Good to speak with me. We always do this charade whenever we have you on, but yeah, good to speak with you about it's that time of year again. The nights are drawn in. It's cold, miserable. It's Liverpool Man United at Anfield. Before there's a lot we could go through, and some of these podcasts have been like a bit cathartic over the past few seasons. I think this one's going to be the same, but I did want to ask you if you can to take your mind back to obviously happier times end of last season. United obviously finishing a positive season, 1 trophy, top 4 finish. Champions League secured, runners up obviously. I think it was the FA Cup as well, quarterfinals of the Europa League. Felt like green shoots of recovery and progress. So I wanted to ask you, when you got to the end of last season, how were you feeling about things? And I suppose, what do you think was the work that needed to be done to then build on that?
At the end of last season, I think the overwhelming feeling from those around Manchester United was relief, and I would say a little bit of exhaustion. Manchester United played 62 games in 22-23, the most out of any club in Europe's top 5 leagues, because they got to the final League Cup, the FA Cup. They also played that additional round of the Europa League in the playoff against Barcelona on top of things. So a lot of miles were on the clock. There was a lot of faith in Ten Hag. Ten Hag had a large amount of credit in the bank, which to outsiders seemed quite bizarre. I remember talking to a Newcastle supporting friend before the season started, where he asked if Erik Ten Hag has a mountain title challenge, you think he's under pressure losing his job? And I said, no, not really. This friend remarked, that's absurd. He spent more than 330 million across 2 summers. Why is he not under pressure to mount a title race? Right. And I think things have changed at Manchester United. There's very little appetite to tear it up and start again. And there seems to be an understanding that United aren't quite there yet, but might get there eventually under Ten Hag. We're talking now in December after 12 defeats in all competitions, which is the same amount Manchester United lost throughout the entirety of those 62 games last season. And Ten Hag's lost a lot of that credit in the bank. There's a lot of questions over whether or not his style of football is compatible with his collection of players. And while I don't think there is an appetite to remove him from a lot of stadium goers, a lot of the moderates, as some people like to term them, I do think there's a lot of raised eyebrows and going, how long does this last? How long can United keep playing this way without any form of change? Because things are looking quite dreary.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get on to sort of where United find themselves at the moment. And I think, listening to a little bit of, I think your conversations about last night's game and the season in general, it does appear to be this obviously this weird situation where there's not much appetite to get rid of the manager and change him, but not necessarily to do with a underlying faith that he's going to turn it around or be the guy, but for other reasons. And we'll come on to talk about those. But end of last season, you say a bit of relief, exhaustion, lots of fixtures played. Be familiar to Liverpool fans of a few seasons beforehand. You don't have to play every game. You don't have to. You can decide not to do that. And for all the children flying to Union San Giles for tomorrow evening, very glad about that. But you mentioned obviously the money that was spent this summer. I suppose that was the question I was asking around. Like, yes, relief, yes, exhaustion, but in order to actually give Ten Hag the best opportunity prior to a ball being kicked this season to actually progress this United team, where did you think were the obvious areas that needed to be addressed? We can talk about the business and the players who came in, obviously, but where were those positions and did they end up being addressed?
So I think what's interesting is the shortlist of positions changed quite quickly from April onwards. I'd say in April time, it looked as if Manchester United were likely to persist with David De Gea in goal, and the priority was going to be central midfield and up front. Striker was absolutely the priority. Eric Ten Hag was talking about the need to get more players in more forward positions as early as January, when it became quite apparent that Weghorst was not the required standard. Weghorst was a body, but you needed someone that could offer more. And when Weghorst departed on his loan, the only fit specialised centre forward, as we should say, was Anthony Martial. Martial, as Eric Ten Hag admitted partly through last season, cannot play 90 minutes in a week. So if United were going to play Champions League football, then you needed at least one senior striker. I think other United fans believe perhaps you needed two bodies in there just to make sure, because Martial's body Martial cannot trust his own body, and he plays like he can't trust his own body. So striker was number one priority. And then in April, Lisandro Martinez and Rafa Varane got injured. Manchester United lose 3-0 against Sevilla away from home. And you could see the tide turning on David De Gea, which could compound in the FA Cup final, where it became quite apparent that if United were eventually to push on and become Eric Ten Hag team, there would need to be a change in goal. So those were two priorities: goalkeeper in order to shape Manchester United's build-up play, and then striker in order to put those chances away. Now, the really curious thing about United's summer transfer window is they got those roles. They brought in Andre Onana in goal. They brought in Rasmus Højlund up front. And I think many United fans remarked that when Liverpool were in this back and forth with Chelsea over Moises Caicedo, Manchester United looked to be done. They brought in Mason Mount to be their new box-to-box midfielder. Okay, questions over as to whether or not you could be a box-to-box midfielder, but they had brought in a central midfield body. They had brought in Andre Onana, who was going to be their new goalkeeper, and they had brought in Rasmus Højlund as their striker. So the three major positions were sorted. And I think more than one United fan went, wow, it's really fun looking at Chelsea and Liverpool punching over their key positions, knowing that our business has been done. Then things changed quite quickly. The Mason Greenwood situation made it quite clear that Manchester United perhaps had recognised they needed an additional striker, but rather than try and purchase or get one on loan, their plan was perhaps to bring Mason Greenwood back. Manchester United maintained that the plan was never to bring him back. There was no U-turn, but reporting by Adam Kraft and others suggests otherwise. So depending on who you talk to, United are either a striker down in their plans this summer, or this was always the plan. it also became very apparent that Lisandro Martinez might need backup as well, and Casemiro might need a deputy. So things rapidly changed, and we saw this on transfer deadline. I think Sofiane Amrabat was brought in on loan as a Casemiro deputy, perhaps partner, and Sergio Reguilon, the third choice left back at Tottenham Hotspur, was brought in because Luke Shaw had an injury as well. So by the time the window closed, there was this idea that there were enough bodies in place, but there are also questions as to how this will all work. 2 games into the season, it became quite apparent that Mason Mount, Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes does not make a well-balanced midfield 3. And things, the amount of questions around Ten Hag and his approach began to rise. And unfortunately, even in December, I only have a fixed amount of answers I can give you.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing that stood out to me. I think you're right. I think such was the pursuit for a number 6 defensive midfielder from Liverpool, from a number of clubs this summer. Once it became clear, obviously, that Jude Bellingham wanted his name up in lights in Madrid, and boy, as he put the name up in lights in Madrid, I have to say that it became apparent, right, that the midfield overhaul was needed. And we were looking over at United and think, well, they're done. They got their business done quite early. I'm interested in what you think. I mean, Onana sort of makes sense to me in terms of Ten Hag's previous work with him. Do you think that the profile of goalkeeper, the deficiencies of De Gea, it makes sense? Square peg, square hole. Whatever. It makes sense. Rasmus Højlund, I'm a little bit interested in terms of, it's clearly a lot of money for a young player, talent. In terms of the profile of striker that you thought United were going to go after, did he fit that mold as well? That you think, well, this is young, room for development, pacey. What profile of striker do you think Ten Hag was going to go after, and did Højlund fit the bill?
So every summer or every transfer window, I create this series called Shopping for Ten Hag on The Athletic, where I sort of say, these are the players Ten Hag has used in the past. These are press conferences where Ten Hag has been asked about what sort of players he likes. And then I say, based on that, and based on what statistical data I can find across Europe, these are the players that fit the bill. And Højlund did fit the bill. He's 6 foot. I want to say he's 6'3". He might be 6'1", 6'2". He's tall. He's broad. He's very, very, very quick. He can run 100 meters in 11 seconds, I believe. There's 2 or 3 scenes of him in Serie A where in a straight line he's absolutely devastating.
The height is deceptive. I say he doesn't look 6'3", but
he's got a very interesting. His body is very interesting in that he's got a long torso but relatively short legs for his height. But he's got explosive pace and he's a presser. He's a very, very, very diligent presser. So, like you've just described about the scramble for a number 6 that a number of clubs had in Europe, I think there is a striker shortage. Everyone now understands that dedicated number 9s, not a Marcus Rashford or a Kylian Mbappe style inverted forward, but someone who really wants to play as a number 9, a central focal point, who doesn't mind playing with his back towards goal, doesn't mind getting kicked in the shins or have his calves raked by centre forwards. I think there are, perhaps at any point in time, there are maybe 6 clubs in Europe that would be improved by having a 2018 version of Olivier Giroud. Just someone who can occupy centre backs and then ping the ball near post for whatever wingers they want to cut inside and shoot. So in that striker shortage, Rasmus Højlund became an appealing name. Now we're talking on Wednesday, and before kickoff on Tuesday, Manchester United played Bayern Munich. I heard Paul Scholes say Manchester United, the no-brainer signing would have been Harry Kane. And I will tell you that it became apparent as early as April that Manchester United would not be going in for Harry Kane, or they were very wary of getting into a protracted transfer saga with Tottenham Hotspur for Harry Kane. It became very apparent that Daniel Levy was loath to negotiate with any other Premier League club. It also became very apparent that if Manchester United or any club wanted to get Harry Kane, you would probably have to pay around about £100 million to get that deal done. And then on top of that, and this is the thing that I think a number of commentators have often forgot, is that Harry Kane would come with very expensive wages. We're talking right now, Harry Kane is one of the most expensive He's one of the highest paid players at Bayern Munich, and that he comes with certain responsibilities in that Bayern Munich dressing room. And a player in his 30s who you would sign for, let's say, 3-4 years on north of £200,000 a week at a club of Manchester United's very odd FFP considerations. A deal for Harry Kane would have been prohibitively expensive. Whereas Højlund,
Sure.
okay, 76 million. It's a lot of money, especially for a 20-year-old who had only 9 non-penalty goals in Serie A last season. But his wages compared to Harry Kane's were a lot lower, and that made that deal more palatable. I also think if you look into other strikers in Europe that made a move, Randall Kolo Muani went to PSG, as did Gonçalo Ramos. And while I think both of those players have been very good in the past, it seems PSG are having a while to implement both of them. Gonçalo Ramos plays predominantly in the league, and Kolo Muani seems to play a lot more in the Champions League. We'll see what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. We'll see PSG starting up against Newcastle. We'll see what happens there. So Ramos fit Ten Hag's profile, and Højlund fits Ten Hag's profile in that he's a good presser. He's very, very quick. He's very strong. Ten Hag over preseason talked about making Manchester United the best transition team in the world. And if you want a striker who's very good in transition, a player of Højlund's ilk fits. The question was always, is it wise to go into a season where a 20-year-old picked up a back issue over preseason at Atalanta, is it wise to have that as your primary striker and your only other backup to be Anthony Martial or moving Marcus Rashford centre forward? We're talking December, and now it looks a bit unwise. They probably could have done with another body.
Yeah, and I suppose it probably gives a little bit more credence to what you were talking about there, that maybe the initial plan, despite obviously the denials that we've heard, was to integrate Greenwood, who then departed. And I think, from the outside in, you mentioned the way in which the transfer window ends, and okay, the start is quite methodical. You're going after these players, these targets, they fit the remit. Amrabat, and then Johnny Evans. I forget when Johnny Evans came in actually, but
Johnny Evans came in quite early, but it was on a short-term contract. So this was Darren Fletcher, who's the technical director at Manchester United, informed Erik ten Hag that Johnny Evans was a free agent, and essentially made it clear that Johnny Evans would be of use on a short-term contract for the academy players. Johnny Evans is a consummate professional, very, very well-educated, very well-spoken, and very good role model. And it initially seemed like the plan was he was going to be a short-term loan over pre-season, perhaps with a window to
coaching
that deal to coaching. Yeah. What has transpired is he has started more games than Rafael Varane since October.
There's a reason Bowling Green State University is ranked #1 in Ohio for student experience. Our in-demand degrees and life design program prepares students for their first career and their next. With an unparalleled support system at a national research university, BGSU offers an unrivaled experience, all on a vibrant campus in one of America's best college towns. It's also why Bowling Green State University is the #1 school in the Midwest that students would choose again for the 4th year in a row.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Wow, I didn't realize it was quite that stark. But no, I've seen a lot more of Johnny Evans than I expected to in the year 2023. So I'm guessing it's also come as a surprise to those at Man United as well. But yeah, I mean, beyond the signings, I mean, I was struck by how I felt, even with the most, coherent preseason in the world, the best plans that you have going into a season, that these other factors were, to my mind anyway, it seems impossible for that not to undermine some sense of momentum and harmony going into a season. As we talk about things like, obviously Greenwood's departure and everything surrounding that. The way in which David De Gea's departure obviously eventually came about, which I think, whatever you think of his shortcomings as a goalkeeper in 2023, I felt was fairly remarkable to let someone who won Player of the Season that many times leave in that way. It's obviously a shame. And then also the sort of the exile of Jadon Sancho, I suppose, that came. I can't remember when it came now, but it was a few games into the season, wasn't it?
After the defeat to Arsenal, so before the second international break, I want to say.
There's just so many of them. Yeah, okay, sure. Yes, yeah. I think I remember the comments online and like the denial of it being fitness or whatever it might be. But whatever the reasons behind that, those are three pretty big issues. I mean, dealing with one of them going into a season can always cause a bit of disharmony, and all three of them combined, I felt, okay, this is has the potential to dampen things. And I just wonder, in your opinion, I mean, it's hard to quantify anything like that. We can't find a stat for it, right? But those off the pitch issues, I suppose. What's your reading of how much that sort of disrupted, Ten Hag's ability to just focus on, the next game and like have no distractions?
It's hard to say. Very often with these things, it's hard to come up with the definitive learnings until the season is finished and certain individuals have departed. What we do know is Richard Arnold has given more than one meeting with staff at Manchester United and has fielded questions. Yeah. I believe one of the big things have been about the potential takeover. Potential takeover at the start of the season, which has now been changed to this minority investment from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. So there's been this long-standing strategic review that's been more than a year reviewing things. Has taken a while to come to fruition, and there's been a number of members of staff at Manchester United that have questions as to what the future is and how Manchester United come to these plans and how they make these plans. In terms of how this affects on-field performance, I can't tell you until certain individuals tell their side of the story. We will probably never know truly what has happened between Jadon Sancho and Erik ten Hag until Jadon Sancho chooses to speak his truth. Because, Erik ten Hag has spoken his truth and he said he doesn't want to talk about it. And as far as we know, a lot of it falls down to an apology, a spoken apology between those two individuals. But Sancho may come up and say words to the contrary there. What I will say is that having watched Manchester United's very first game of the season against Wolverhampton Wanderers, I was very surprised at how bad they were.
Okay.
So Erik ten Hag talked about making United the best transition team in the world. He said he was going to do one thing. The signings he was going to say made relative sense. There were a number of question marks over whether or not Mason Mount was the best player in order to action that. But such was the good faith or credit in the bank Ten Hag had that United fans were largely like, okay, this is what Ten Hag wants to do. And this is what happened. And then you watch the games against Wolverhampton Wanderers and went, this is not adding up. Manchester United were frighteningly porous in central midfield. Mason Mount did not play like someone who for the box-to-box role, but it seemed like someone who wanted to play next to Bruno Fernandes to create sort of 4-1-4-1 instead of a 4-3-3. And Højlund, nursing a back injury, couldn't start. So it was Marcus Rashford up front. United won that game through a header from Rafael Varane, and you went, okay, you got away with that. Andre Onana very nearly came close to giving away a penalty. I believe the referee apologised to Gary O'Neill at full time, saying, I probably could have given you a penalty for that instant final.
The first apology to Wolves this season.
Indeed. And then problems exacerbated against Tottenham Hotspur in the second game of the season. United started very well. First 45 minutes, very, very good. In the second 45 minutes, they just got completely outplayed. And you rewatch that game, and the reason they got outplayed was because their out of possession plan to press Tottenham, their United's front three play in a very narrow shape, and they press the centre backs and try and block off one area of the field. And Tottenham Hotspur went, okay, well, if we just make our centre-backs stand wider, we'll stretch your press and make it easier to pass through you. It took 45 minutes for Tottenham Hotspur to figure out how to play against Manchester United. That became 20 minutes for Brighton in a following fixture. And then we saw this time and time again, where Manchester United will come and have a decent game plan for 40 minutes or 20 minutes, or perhaps even 30 minutes. And then the opposition will make a small tweak and then find it very easy to play against. And this has become really, really concerning for Manchester United. They're playing in a man-to-man-esque fashion up front and in central midfield, and teams are finding it very easy to play against.
He insists he's not doing that, right? Now, I've seen comments where he's been asked about this man-to-man approach, and he said, "Well, we don't play man-to-man." But I mean, the little I've watched of United, that is the thing that's really struck me. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan, watching Liverpool sides in different iterations. Yeah, from the most sophisticated version of the press we've had to the more rabble-like version of the press we've had, and when it is towards the latter, just how easy it is for teams to realize, oh, we can stretch you. Oh, this is not, you're not going to get close to the ball. We'll pass around you. We're technically able to do this. And you can quickly look a lot worse than perhaps you even are as the sum of your parts. And I've been struck by the amount of space teams have seemed to have against United. And for me, yeah, interesting, because you mentioned that I think one of the narratives of the season with Amrabat coming in has been, yes, the cohesiveness of that midfield, but has Casemiro suddenly joined Fabinho in sort of this steep decline in terms of physical capacity? Do you think that particular decline of a player has really caught the team off guard? I mean, last season he had games where I think there were signals that this could be in the future for him, but in other games you seem to be the glue that held the side together at times. Do you think that's his decline in particular has caught the hierarchy off guard?
I think so. And also, I mean, I'm talking to you in December, having watched a number of games where Casemiro has not been very good. And yet I cannot definitively tell you what's behind his decline. The pithy, glib answer is to say his legs have gone. But I'm not sure that's true. To say someone's legs have gone, it implies a diminished physical capacity, whereas Casemiro is playing with a very different cognitive reading of the game. He's not playing like a defensive midfielder anymore. Now, last season he was playing a lot of attacking moves. He was very, very good on transition, and I think if you've only seen Casemiro play in Champions League games, which I'd say myself largely, I haven't watched too many games of Casemiro against the lower half of La Liga. I've mostly seen him in playing Clásicos or against Atletico Madrid and Champions League games. So he did 2 or 3 attacking passes where I was like, I didn't know Casemiro could do that. That's quite nice. Whereas this season, it's not simply he's passing like an attacking midfielder, but he's running like one. He's ahead of the ball in so many crucial moments. Casemiro, to my mind, is one of the best defensive midfielders at stopping cutbacks, at stopping pullbacks, at understanding when the winger is in a certain area, the back four need to be in a certain position to block off the striker, and you as the defensive midfielder need to be stood on the edge of the box to wait for that late runner. And there have been multiple times this season where Casemiro is not there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not because he is running back and cannot get there in time, but because he's just stood far and away in a way that he my friend said it feels as if Casemiro knocked himself in the head and woke up and thought it was Zico. It is such a dramatic change in how he's playing football. And that's a concern, because while he was fantastic last season, he covered up a lot of cracks for Manchester United. Ten Hag's team had a better foundation or structure than parts of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's run at Manchester United, but that foundation relied a lot on the individual qualities of 2 or 3 individuals. So last season, the plan was, your out possession plan is to press man to man, but if you cannot win the ball in, I want to say 5 seconds, you were supposed to retreat into a compact 4-4-2, and if you couldn't do that, and then you retreat. Now, the counter pressing element, the win the ball back after you've just lost the ball, I want to say a large percentage of that, 50% of that, was done via Casemiro and Lisandro Martinez. those two individuals in particular, because they were very good in their 1v1 duels. Martinez has come back from his metatarsal injury and has not looked the same. We know he was taking painkillers at the start of this season, and he's looked heavier. Right. He's looked a shadow of his former self. Casemiro has just not looked anywhere near the counter-pressing person he was last season. So your plan to go man-to-man and then drop back into 4-4-2, that 5-second window is gone. United are far worse at winning the ball back within 5 seconds. And also how they retreat into that shape is gone, because the best person at giving the command saying now we retreat is not doing that anymore for reasons that I still cannot explain.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm getting flashbacks. I mean, the flashbacks of Henderson actually last season, not that, because he's never been a defensive midfielder, but multiple times last season, certainly, where teams are countering on Liverpool, which they did a lot. And, you're like, oh, where is that guy? you see in the replay, and he's like on the left wing, and you're, oh, okay. Again, I think when Milner would be in the field sometimes, I'd see similar from him and go, has someone knocked you on the head, James? I mean, you're not getting back. So you're not going to get there. And I think Liverpool fans who are listening to this will be aware, right, that you talk about the value of being in that position to stop a cutback from being fruitful as the final pass. Been on the wrong end of that with Casemiro many, many times in different games against Real Madrid, right? It is amazing how effective that one particular skill can be, as you're saying, papering over cracks. Maybe other people are not in the positions they should be, but his dependence, also the reliability of him being there to squash an otherwise promising attack, very effective.
This is very
demoralizing.
This is why Arsenal spent 100 million on Declan Rice. Declan Rice
will do that.
Phenomenal at that particular skill. He's phenomenal against defending on the transition. And so many of the top teams, the teams that want to finish in the top 4 in England and harbour ambitions of getting past the Champions League quarterfinals, want to commit bodies in front of the ball. You want to attack not just with your front three, but also with your fullbacks. And also one of your attacking midfielders, which means when you do lose the ball, you are especially vulnerable. You probably only have 3 men back. So one of your 3 men has to be very good at either delaying that final ball or making sure that late runner cannot have a cutback. Declan Rice is phenomenal at that. Fabinho was phenomenal at that.
He was,
I think what's quite interesting now, we talk about the defensive midfield shortage. Tottenham Hotspur, either through accident or design, have 2 very good young defensive midfielders in Basuma and Bentancur. And it looked as if Manchester United had someone who could solve that problem for a little bit in Casemiro, but it's become very apparent that they will probably either this summer, the summer coming in 2024, or the summer next summer, will need to get another defensive midfielder.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own 2-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, well, you can join us in the the saga for looking for that guy, because it's a very underrated. I mean, the position is not underrated anymore, but that particular skill that you're talking about there, I think, even despite where Liverpool find themselves in the table right now, I don't think that has necessarily done a great job at stopping those cutbacks. Or if they have, it's been one of the 8s who's busted a gut to get back there and is doing a job, but is probably would like not to do that. I suppose then, well into this season then, we were speaking the day after United have, exited the Champions League, exited Europe, having, I think it was a pretty disastrous, obviously, performance in the group. You talked, it's very fitting, right? We've talked about how open the side has looked at times, and up until last night, which I thought was a very more compact, more disciplined display for them when they needed to win. The group has been like that, right? The teams in Europe who, more often than not in the Champions League, are all very good and back themselves to attack, no matter what league they come from. They're usually used to being the best teams in those leagues. They will attack you. I've been amazed, I think, at how much space they have been afforded in these games. Just give me your thoughts. I mean, we could talk about the Premier League in a bit, but your thoughts on adopting that approach to the Champions League, and do you think it's, you've suggested so far, right? Is it because there's this realization that actually they don't have the players to enable them to play the way in which they were playing last season? They showed a more compact approach last night, right? But it did seem like it came at the expense of creativity and attacking. Yes, missing lots of players as well, but there was a question in me last night. Well, if you can play this way now, I understand it's a Bayern in third or fourth gear. Not getting into those gears rather. But yeah, your thoughts on Europe and why you think Ten Hag adopted that approach for the group stages, where if you're just sensible and you're 2-0 up, okay, like let's make this ugly, and just get the result and leave. We've seen that work time and time again. Why do you think that he adopted that? Again, I know the Anana moments, but your thoughts on Europe.
So the old school adage is if you want to get out of your European group, be it Champions League, Europa League, or Conference League, you win your home games and you draw your away games. Yeah. And I was in attendance for Galatasaray at home, Copenhagen away, and Bayern Munich at home. So I was in attendance in the stadium for 3 games, and I covered the other 3 via the television. And something that struck me in the games I was in attendance for was the comments from the opposition managers. So when I was, I spoke via translation to Galatasaray's manager after their victory at Old Trafford, and he said very clearly, he goes, we were 2-0 down against Manchester United, but we always knew we had a chance of getting something in this game because Manchester United always leave opportunities on the transition. And he said, when you play Manchester United, it's very, very hard because we know Manchester United are so dangerous when they counterattack upon you. But the way in which they do that means they themselves are vulnerable to counterattacks. So the moment things went to 2-1 and the moment Casemiro got sent off, he told his players, you're in this. You can win this game. And lo and behold, they went off and did that. I remember talking to Nestrup in Copenhagen, and he was interesting in that he said, the circumstances around Rashford's red card and the turnaround from going from 2-0 down to winning 4-3 and the penalties was very interesting. And he said he believed that Copenhagen's performance against Manchester United was the worst performance they had in the group at that point in time. But he also maintained that he believed Copenhagen were the second best team in that group. He said if they played in a certain manner, they'd get through this group in second place. He said part of the chaos of playing Manchester United means chaotic things happen when you play Manchester United because they want to play at such a quick pace. And this got repeated again from Thomas Tuchel. Tuchel was asked yesterday, was it comfortable beating Manchester United? He goes, no, because it's never comfortable when you come to Old Trafford. They're a very, very strong team in the transition. And what we had to do was make sure we did not leave ourselves too open when we went chasing a goal. And you've heard this also from Premier League managers. We've just had Iriola, the Bournemouth manager, after the 3-0 say, when our game plan against Manchester United was to know there were always going to be opportunities on the transition. I also had Semenyo in the mix zone afterwards say the wide areas were a particular area. They said we know Manchester United's fullbacks like to push high up the field, so we knew when we win the ball back, or if we win the ball back, if we attack wide, there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, Bournemouth apparently can rival players for AC Milan, but I wouldn't say Bournemouth are going to be playing European football anytime soon. What I will say is there are a number of clubs, both in the Premier League and in Europe, that know when you play Manchester United, they're going to be very, very strong in the counter-attack. They encounter problems when you sit deep and don't allow space for the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford running behind. And also, they lack controllers. They lack players that want to slow things down or understand the appreciation of slowing things down, which means you can go 1-0 down against Manchester United, you can go 2-0 down against Manchester United. But if you stay the course and keep your head, there is always going to be an opportunity to score. And there also, less loudly, is going to be a chance Manchester United lose their head, giving up more opportunities as well. Now, that's the really concerning thing for Manchester United. And every time I've asked Erik ten Hag about their propensity to concede goals in multiple goals in 5-minute spells, or their red cards, or their penalties, he's given me the words to the effect of, I'm aware of this, and we need to do better via discipline. But he's never really given me anything too definitive on how he hopes to address this.
Yeah, no, I mean, because again, it's obviously differences. I'm struck by the similarities I've seen across Liverpool teams over the past few seasons when that balance hasn't quite been right. And games at Anfield or whatever, we're just thinking like, why are Fulham not stopping? It's like it's like 2-0. Come on, it's cold. Just that sort of arrogant belief. Like, come on, just make it an easy one. And it is it's partly because they can see players are intelligent. They can see if they figure things out and go, actually, there's some gaps for us here to try and exploit. Coaches are noticing the same. And then once that's understood, as you said, by one or two teams, you say Tottenham figuring it out quite early on. Yeah, it's being shared across, right? I mean, like it's when teams know they can get at you, there's a way back in. As the team that's suffering from that, you have to work for 95, well, not 95 anymore, 110, 115 minutes because you can't rest because you can't really control it. And other teams know you can't control it. So I imagine the stress levels as well must be ratcheted up as well.
Something, a football quote that sticks in my mind was when Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in the 2022 World Cup. And a member of the Argentinian team said the reason we lost against Saudi Arabia is that we were trying to score the second and third goal before we scored the first. In that they had gotten a state where they were so excited to play against this high line that Saudi Arabia were playing that they couldn't control themselves and they lost their heads. And in not sticking to the plan outlined beforehand, they left themselves vulnerable to what Saudi Arabia did. And I was thinking of this quote after the 3-3 draw against Galatasaray in Istanbul, where Scott McTominay said, we should have killed the game off. He goes, when we were 3-1 up, we should have killed the game off. We should have got one more and put it to bed. And you're shaking your head right now because if you talk to a number of people outside Manchester United right now about you are 3-1 up in the second half of a Champions League game, how to kill the game off. If you ask 10, coaches or 10 players who've played European football, you're 3-1 up, second half, Champions League game, how to kill the game off. I don't think many would say score a fourth. No. I think a number of them will go, you put your foot on the ball and you recycle possession for 10, 15 minutes. You make sure your goal kicks take 45 seconds and you're slow to every throw in. And yet this is the, I'm rubbing my hands a lot trying to find the right word for it. This is the interesting or concerning thing about Manchester United right now, in that they find it very, very, very difficult to control games. And now they are trying to embrace chaos, but at the moment they keep succumbing or being overwhelmed by the chaos that they're trying to bring to games. Yeah, no, again, I think there's some similarities I can remember as well around that. Yeah, the best way to control a game is not to score the fourth. It's to be boring. And Liverpool, they look a bit less energy in the last 25, 30 minutes of games. Is it? Oh yeah, it's because they figured out they don't need to do it. Obviously, that was that thing. The peak Liverpool sides had that understanding behind them. I suppose when the guy at United who should be aware of that is like having a late career flourish as an attacking midfielder. He said with Casemiro's just wants to, finally had the handbrake off for a little bit. I guess it can become, a bit of an issue there. Moving on from that, I mean, you've pointed out a couple games there in the Premier League season that particularly like good illustrations of this.
it's obviously, I think the home form was something that was made a lot of last season. There's a good foundation to build off of for Ten Hag. That's obviously not been the same this season. Are there particular games that you think back to in the Premier League this season where you think that will like perfectly illustrate like the array of like scratching your head like sort of questions around this side, both good and bad, almost maybe, like
it's even United's best performances this season in the Premier League have left me
scratching your head.
Scratch my head, or unsatisfied to an extent. So I went to Goodison Park. I watched Manchester United win 3-0. Kobe Mainoo got his Premier League starting debut, and I should say Kobe, not Kobe. And I've had a number of non-Manchester United fans ask, "Why are you so excited about Mainoo? What is he doing that is so exciting?" And I think what was really interesting was after that debut. Gary Neville said he played like a Manchester City player. And that was the highest compliment he could give him, in that he was comfortable receiving the ball in the half turn. He was comfortable passing on the half turn. He had awareness of where to stand and what to do and how to look after the ball. And that has been so rare at Manchester United in the last 10 years that those are now traits that are
stands out
given to that stand out. And this has happened in 2 or 3 players. Andre Onana, his passing ability is just far and above and beyond what David De Gea could do. So 2 or 3 times at the start of the season where he would do something like, wow, like, if you've only watched Manchester United week to week, you've never seen a goalkeeper do some of the things Andre Onana had done. It's a bit like watching to borrow something from Russo Wonga, watching an amphibian climb on land, going, "Oh, look at you! You've gone out the penalty area."
Yeah.
So that was another thing. The Everton performance was good for Manchester United because Mainoo put his foot on the ball. He had a pauser. He could receive on the half turn. He could take it from his centre backs, and even though he was being pressured, he could receive the ball, turn around, and drive with it, which is something that Christian Eriksen can't really do, that Casemiro struggles to do in the first phase, that Scott McTominay cannot do, that Bruno Fernandes cannot do. And Fernandes, I know we've spoken previously about how, Jordan Henderson cannot receive with his back to a defender well, so he often cheats by, rather than receive it in the centre, he cheats by going out wide to do it. Bruno Fernandes' cheat is he'll do a back heel.
I've seen, a lot of these, little flick passes up the wall, and you think, that's clever, but
to try and keep it going. But Mainoo just took it, received, and turned, and that was interesting. And that's why that performance was good, because United scored they won a Premier League game by more than 1 goal. But also, Everton had an XG of about 4, because even Manchester United's best performances still allow a ridiculous amount of chances. I'm talking to you right now, and Manchester United have given up 237 shots on goal in the Premier League this season. That is the 5th worst. The only teams that have allowed more shots are Bournemouth, West Ham, Luton Town, and Sheffield United. So teams that are in the bottom half or likely to be relegated. So the Chelsea game is being regarded by a number of United fans as being the best performance all season. Manchester United had their best front press all season. Now, part of that is because if you're pressing a team and the instruction is press the players on every heavy touch they have, if that team is Chelsea, you're going to get a couple more heavy touches. Unfortunately, Chelsea's build-up play is good theoretically, but they're prone to a bit of flat notes. So there was that going on. And even then, Chelsea still had a number of chances on United's goal as well. If Andre Onana is not the goalkeeper United fans expected, but also I think any goalkeeper right now would find it difficult playing for Manchester United, because you're probably going to face 6 to 8 shots on target per game.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, no, I don't remember. I was chatting earlier in the season. I hadn't seen so much of Onana previously. I was like, well, has he actually been used to facing this volume of shots? Because I mean, he's not primarily known for being a Mignolet or a Pickford. Who I remember when they were signed they moved from Sunderland. These stats, these amazing stats. Is that they face a lot of shots. They face a huge quantity of shots. So they're great shot stoppers. That's what you know about them. They're going to be consistent at that. Onana, I don't think that necessarily was used to doing that. Certainly not at Inter in the same way, right? So it's interesting when you talked about Mainu there. I was thinking about just how much Cole Palmer stood out for Chelsea so many times this season. Where there's someone receiving the ball in the half turn and looking up and going, well, I could do that, but 2-0 up. And turning around and passing it back. And you go, that's it. That's the thing. That's the thing that we see lots of Liverpool, well, not lots of Liverpool, but some Liverpool fans on some corners of the internet still don't seem to understand what Curtis Jones has been told to do when he comes into the side. Is that's what he's been told to do that? Because it's sometimes useful to do that rather than, I don't know, what Gravenberch's doing, where he's like, I can beat 3 men here and maybe, set up a... So no, you don't need to do that. So, it's amazing when you...
I must say, and I've said this before at the start of the season, I find it quite funny, and I'm rather jealous that having supported Manchester United for however many years and watched United go year after year after year after year after year and not address their central midfield, it's quite funny to watch Liverpool address their central midfield in one summer. And the job is not complete. But in terms of, we're going to bring in more than one central midfielder in a summer. That is the United fans' version of, you can do that? That's not illegal?
Yeah. And I know obviously that's the way in which it played out. I think most fans agree that there probably is that first choice defensive role that still needs to be filled. And then, you start wondering to yourself what the likes of Szoboszlai, McAllister and, Gravenberch can achieve when they don't have to look around and they can just rely on somebody there, preferably, Uruguayan or whatever, kicking people and being in the right place. Ugarte obviously went to PSG, unfortunately. But, I think, it was interesting. And I think the most notable thing to me is just the jump in technical ability has been remarkable. Like, I think that at times you sometimes look at these players and go, it's not the smartest choice in the moment. Like, you don't have to. I know it's your natural inclination is to go forward, maybe beat a couple of people, look for that piercing pass when you probably shouldn't. But the technical ability, I've been shocked. I mean, the Szoboszlai is having a bit of a quieter few weeks at the moment, but the jump there is pretty huge, and even Gravenberch is clearly a talented kid, which feels weird to describe somebody who is twice my size as a kid, but that's what he is. Coming out to the game, kind of conscious of time, one factor that I think, I'm defending Ten Hag here, you can put your hand up legitimately and say is, there are, coming to this game at Anfield on the weekend, there's potentially 13 players that I can't call upon for injuries, for the reasons you talked about in terms of, Sancho not being available. Fernandes, picked up that card in the last game, didn't he? So he's not going to be available to be at Anfield and be slagged off by Gary Neville for his attitude, things like that. So there's a lot of absences. So legitimately, I think this weekend alone, Ten Hag's hand is going to be forced. But I mean, just in terms of him trying to turn things around and build a side or put out a side that resembles a bit more closely what he is trying to do anyway. I mean, just how hamstrung do you think he is at the moment? That's not meant to be a pun about that, but
it's difficult now to go back to what I said about Ten Hag saying he wanted to make Manchester United the best transition team in the world. That made sense when he first said it. So he said this in pre-season, and if you look at United squad at the time, and he said your best players last season were Luke Shaw, Lisandro Martinez, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford, very, very good on the attacking transition. Bruno Fernandes, very, very good on the attacking transition. Bruno Fernandes is a very orthodox player because he puts ball progression above ball retention, which most number 10s or central midfielders don't do anymore. Casemiro is playing very, very good on the transition because he's a great counter presser. Luke Shaw, very, very good ball progressor in the first and second phases. Lisandro Martinez, very, very good passing and build-up play. So it made sense that Ten Hag went, these players are all very, very good on transition. If I just supplement them with other players, we can be very good in the attacking transition. Now, it was always a question of, could he make United better on the defensive transition? And that seemed to be a question of, could he make United a better pressing team? More than one manager's come in and said he wants United to press. I mean, Louis van Gaal seemed like he wanted United to press for a little bit and then relented. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, when he took over from Jose Mourinho, got United to play higher up the field and get more turnovers and then relented eventually. Ralf Rangnick is regarded as the godfather of gegenpressing. And I think there was one game against Crystal Palace where Fred got a goal and then it quickly became apparent that the players did not have the appetite for pressing, so he relented as well. Ten Hag's Ajax team pressed very, very well, and it was a good counter-pressing team as well. You know, a player like Frankie de Jong doesn't seem like a great presser, but if you put him in a team where everyone else can press, all of a sudden it's good. Now the question was, could you make a good pressing team with Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford in your front four? And that was one of those questions where you go, yes, but ... The other two members of your front four need to have certain attributes. Anthony, due to the amount of money spent on him, it seems to be a lock on the right hand side. And Anthony, while he has his many, many flaws, and I'm not a particular fan of him, has an aptitude for defensive work. He tracks back and he has a very good understanding of what Erik ten Hag wants. And he seems to have that position locked down for a bit. Rasmus Højlund, tall, quick, good aptitude for pressing. So that made sense. But what we've seen is this counter-pressing unit doesn't work anymore. Part of this is due to Casemiro's diminished output, and part of this is due to, I want to say, outright naivete. Players not realizing when they're being taken for a walk in their 1v1 marking duties. James Maddison in the second half against Tottenham Hotspur cottoned on that Casemiro's man marking, went, okay, well, I'm just going to receive the ball really deep and create loads of space for Salah to enter. Now, when that happens, do you as a player continue to man mark, or do you go, I'm switching? That's the difficulty. And I can't tell you if Ten Hag's telling his players to stick to their man marking duties or if giving them license there. So that's the concern. And the concern here, I mean, Manchester United lost 7-0 to Liverpool last season because they tried marking man to man, and the game plan was master your 1v1 physical duels. And after playing a ridiculous amount of games in a very short space of time, they were exhausted before they played Liverpool. And Liverpool, even in their diminished capacity last season, strong, quick, very dominant in their 1v1 duels. So they absolutely monstered Manchester United in the 1v1 duels. They got past the first line of pressure. And on top of that, some days you have a good scoring streak. Everything Gakpo touch turned to goal. Everything Nunez touch turned to goal. I think the XG is somewhere close to 3 or somewhere close to 4, and you scored 7 times. So the concern for United is not only do they not have the players to play a a similar game plan they did against Liverpool, which you lost 7-0. But also the alternatives are limited. No Bruno Fernandes as number 10. Do you play Donny van de Beek? Do you play Hannibal? Do you play Scott McTominay in that position? Yeah.
Just remind me how many minutes has Donny van de Beek played this season? You were telling me. I was shocked to hear that.
3.
So it's some
3
Donny's game. If Donny does end up on that team sheet on the weekend, it's some hospital pass from a manager. Oh, hey, Donny.
And this man, Ten Hag says it's not man marking. It's meant to be zonal, but it looks like man marking because the pressure from your front 4, your front 6 hasn't been adequate. So it looks like you're man marking midfield, which is not lining up with what I'm seeing. And the problem is Ten Hag is saying a number of things that isn't lining up with what you're seeing. Rafael Varane wasn't starting because Ten Hag viewed him as only an option for right centre back, and then he played left centre back against
last night. Right? Yeah,
odd.
Maguire's injured now, of course. Shaw picked up something last night as well. Those two have actually been better performers this season. Let's say certainly since Maguire came back to the team. We have this probably back and forth around Scott McTominay, and just my opinion on Scott McTominay is that when he is this integral to what you are doing as a side, that is an issue. That's probably a sign that something else is not working. I get what he's good at, and I get what he's not good at, and what he's good at, he can prove effective, but the extent to which so much seems to be going through him right now.
I wouldn't even say it's not going through him.
No, but he's
going to feed him.
Yeah, he's the tip of the diamond.
Yes,
yes.
So he's working as this free 8, and he's given license to get ahead of the ball and to make later elbows into the box. So much so that sometimes he's cannibalizing the runs of Højlund. And due to his deficiencies in possession, he contributes very little in possession into when United's build-up plays. He is there to punctuate things, not to contribute. And like you say, this is a tactic that would make sense if you were a team of Crystal Palace's level.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a realistic. I think in building your team around one player like Scott McTominay in this manner, you put a harsh ceiling on what Manchester United can achieve this season. However, at a time when no other forwards are scoring for Manchester United, what else do you have?
Yeah, I suppose ask you then. I mean, this weekend we might see quite a strange lineup. You say the likes of Donny van de Beek being discussed. Hannibal, I heard, was obviously being discussed. In defence, am I right in thinking that it has to be Evans to start? If Lindelof's gone, Maguire.
Victor Lindelof is of a undisclosed status. So he could make training on Friday, but as far as we know, he didn't train or feature against Bayern Munich. Harry Maguire seems to have a groin complaint. Luke Shaw seems to have a hamstring complaint.
Right.
So in all likelihood, it will be Johnny Evans left centre back and Rafa Varane right centre back. Which, I mean, if I'm going to be very generous, I'll say both of those players have Champions League medals.
They do. Yeah. I think that's probably the best thing to say in this situation. Like very well handled. I suppose then, beyond this game.
I'd like to flip this on to you. As a Liverpool expert, one thing you've got right now is you've got many, many options, both in your starting lineup and on the bench. You got that late victory over Crystal Palace, in part because of those changes with Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott coming on.
Yeah.
When you're up against an opponent like United what I would do to the starting lineup is probably different to what Ten Hag would do. But when you're up against an opponent like United that are probably going to be strongest in those transitional moments and are likely to play man to man, the front 3, one of those players is going to be Mohamed Salah. Darwin Núñez probably looks like a good option, considering what happened last time at Anfield. And then it'll be
Diaz is a lock-in, I think, at the moment. No, not because he's playing particularly well. He's not playing particularly well. But I think, and he's obviously been through horrendous things like over the past few months alone. But there's no one. Well, on the left side, not many options that, well, if you want pace, I think even in bad form, Diaz is going to offer, like, I think what you're talking about with Anthony, right? It's quick and will work hard, understands the job in that sense. The productivity has not been there. If you're asking me about sort of like what would I do with Liverpool's side, I think United are sort of a interesting opponent, right? You could probably go more aggressive than I would want us to do. I think that for me, McAllister won't be available for this game, so I imagine Endo may start again. Given his age, given what the other eights tend to like to do, I would like Curtis Jones to come in, just because he is one that we were talking about, like Maino, who I thought understands, I'm going to give that guy some support. I'll let Trent, who is wherever, and Szoboszlai, they do their thing. Like, I'm going to sit back a little bit just to guard against what you're talking about, that transition, not let a 30-year-old like have to do that on his own. So I think that would be the big change I would make. Elliot, I'm really enjoying these cameos that he's having. I don't think he's a midfielder still, which is kind of interesting. Well, a Klopp midfielder still. But in these cameos where he can come on, have a free role, and just focus on like what's the most incisive, direct thing I can do, he's effective. His big thing last season wasn't really getting numbers at all. So he's already, I think, doubled what he had last season. So I'd say that's the change. For Liverpool, I think the concern more actually at the moment is Matip. Probably that's the last we've seen of him in a Liverpool shirt, unfortunately. So it's a sad way I don't imagine his career, his contract's going to be extended, although there's been some suggestions the club will let him do the rehab on the books anyway. So, but then you got Konate, who I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Konate cannot play more than one game a week at the moment, which we have discovered, which is nice. And Joe Gomez has documented injury issues in the past, but is playing well this season, but is having to play a lot of games. So I'm unhappy to see both their names on the flight going out for the fixture tomorrow evening, but there's no one else. And Van Dijk is getting a rest tomorrow evening, but is unlikely to get a rest for the rest of the season. So I think that's the bit of the concern for Liverpool, is that it wouldn't take much for them suddenly to be down to Kwanzaa, who's a kid who hasn't really proved he can play that much football, whilst being good when he has played, and Virgil as your two options for the centre backs. I think that's the concern, but hopefully won't be a concern this weekend. Whenever we come to the wrap up on these chats, I tend to ask you what you think of Liverpool at the moment. I'm not going to rub the top of the league thing in, because it will change within a matter of minutes once the games start. And I'm surprised where Liverpool are at the moment. But yeah, your thoughts on Liverpool, I suppose, ahead of the weekend's game, and then we'll talk about expectations for the season and wrap these things up.
I'm impressed by this Liverpool 2.0. Before the season started, I had them finishing third in the league. Albeit, as I said City 1, Arsenal 2. I said Liverpool 3. I said Liverpool. The gap between Liverpool and Arsenal was 4 points. I said the gap would be very, very close between those two teams. I also said Liverpool would be the top scorers in the league. In that I can see Liverpool score many goals. I also can't see Liverpool keeping many clean sheets. And what has transpired has been largely pretty much in that they're fantastic entertainers. The mentality monsters have continued forward. I am still hesitant to call Trent Alexander-Arnold a midfielder. I much prefer it when he starts at right back and inverts into midfield than when he starts in midfield. I'm not keen on him starting midfield, and I'm saying this not as a Manchester United fan, but as someone who covered England over the Euros. And whenever I watch Trent, I am watching it with one of my eyes is going, what is Southgate thinking? And I much prefer Trent starting at right back and pushing inside rather than starting in midfield. However, I am more than willing to admit I will be wrong. I will be proved wrong about this. I think Trent will eventually become a midfielder of some sort, probably a box-to-box.
Doesn't look like he wants to defend much anymore. To say like it's be great if he did go outside of Salah once or twice, because is able to cross the ball, and there is
very good at it.
Guy Darwin. There's that guy Darwin who could probably probably miss a couple, but he'd score a few. So
Darwin is interesting to me in that I think it's 8 big chances missed this season so far.
Mm-hmm. I missed the last 6 out of the last 8 he's missed, I think, as well. So 9 or whatever.
I have him in my fantasy football team.
It's painful. Right, it's hard for me as well. I've done that.
Considering selling him this weekend and bringing in Dominic Solanke after what happened last week, because Bournemouth have Luton. But also, in terms of how much faith I have in Manchester United right now, I might keep him for one extra week.
It could be the game. Yeah, it could be the game.
It could be the game, and I'm sure what I'm saying here must sound like sacrilegious. Liverpool are a lot of fun. I'm loving the myriad of options they've got in central midfield, and for some reason they play at 12:30 quite often, which means even though I'm often travelling around the place watching Manchester United, I do often get to watch them on television before I start my shift. So
it's a nice advantage.
They're a pleasant watch, and I think they're going to be in the top 3 come the end of the season.
Yeah, we're doing it for you. We're doing it for people before they start their shift. I'm sure that's the reason why, and also the reason why Newcastle happen to be on in the evenings on Sunday. Just speculation. I no idea why, but Anyway, I think that's plenty. I won't ask you for your expectations for the season ahead, because I think you've given us more than enough information on what that could potentially look like. Just wanted to thank you as always for coming on, Carl, and sharing all the insight as ever. It always seems to be a cathartic chat. I think it will be that way until the off the pitch issues are rectified. We didn't even talk about those, but those are obviously bubbling away as well. But thanks as ever for coming on. Is there anything that you think the listeners should check out from you ahead of the fixture, or?
So on Friday, I'll have a piece on The Athletic where I try and come up with what I think is a good plan to go against Liverpool. Not what I think Ten Hag will do, but what I think is a good plan. And the difficulty I'm having right now is I can't come up with a cohesive pressing system or out of possession system that one can invent between now and Sunday that's more advanced than man-to-man, which is concerning because that's going to play right into Liverpool's hands. And I think that's going to be the big thing. What does Ten Hag do out of possession? Because you only have a limited amount of time to flip things. Also on Saturday, if everything goes well for me tomorrow, that means on Saturday I'll have a piece on Andre Onana's shot-stopping technique. I had a fantastic conversation with Sasha of Totally Football fame, who is very good at talking about goalkeepers and is a Liverpool fan as well. And he's been explaining to me a little bit about Onana's odd technique when he goes to save shots, which could be very, very pivotal before this fixture. And other than that, every now and again, you can find me on Righty's House, which is part of the Stadio Connected Universe on Spotify. So that's me, myself, Ian Wright, Mara Quadri, Jeanette Quache, Floyd, Lloyd Hughes, Musa Wonga, and Ryan Hunn, talking about all manner of football and things as well. And also, if you want any other writings of me, you can find me on The Athletic. I don't just write about Manchester United every single week. I got Ajax reads and AFCON reads coming soon too.
Absolutely, yeah. Clearly biased, but would obviously recommend all the listeners do check out Carl's many different pieces on many different topics. Thanks as always for coming on. And just to do a bit of the wrap up, I mean, for those who have been listening to the pod this season, Rival Recon, there are a lot of these this month is particularly. Football is working hard, but it's really hard for us. And that's in the content game. That's clearly the harder shift. And there's more coming. There'll be one ahead of the West Ham game, one ahead of that game against Arsenal, which is very important for me personally, family wise. It's a high stakes match, and we've invited people around to the same same living room to watch that game. So we'll see how that ends up.
I might come to your living room for this game because I'm going to try. I'll be free on Boxing Day, so I might actually come round.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I might have to tone down the mulled wine that's going around like men of a certain age. So do tune in for those, and there'll be a Burnley one in there somewhere as well. But between now and then, check out all the other great the content on Anfield Index Pro, and we'll see you ahead of the game against West Ham, and maybe Arsenal as well.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.